think stay humble, stay hungry. I think be patient. I think surround yourself with really good community, cultivate your network. Every conversation counts. I'm a really big believer on that. And whether you're at a restaurant, in line, whether you're at the grocery store, who knows? But, be personable, talk to people, let people know who you are. And gosh, it might lead you somewhere.
The Posted.Careers podcast. Discussions at the intersection of careers and the future of work. Hosted by Jeffrey Colon.
Let's dive in. What is the role of a recruiter currently in the 21st century, here and now?
It's a great question. I think the role is a partner, someone who's a translator in a very dynamic and complex landscape that we're in right now, and someone who is an advisor and a consigliere of sorts.
Ooh, consigliere. That's interesting. Go a little deeper on that. How do you see yourself sort of as a consigliere when you're in your current role to your clients?
Well, I think it's just good to have knowledge about just the overarching beats of what's happening in the industry and just guide and advise. I think that having a good snapshot and global view of the market is helpful for businesses. They come to us at the talent business for that type of knowledge and just really understanding deeply how things are shifting, how talent's moving. Yeah.
Now, you work a lot with advertising clients. The advertising industry has definitely felt a lot of turbulence the past, let's say, 5 years since 2020, the beginning of the pandemic. It's been shrinking a lot. What does this mean for talent with the fact that there's just a lot of less roles out there?
Yeah, I feel like it has been shrinking, but it's also expanding in different ways as well. And, we work with a lot of brand owners and on the client side and also on the advertising side through, different types of, industries like tech, entertainment, marketing, all of it. And with what feels like it's shrinking, I think that it is creating demand for um, people who know how to pivot and adapt in leaner models, people who can work in a smarter way, or people who are more innovative and on the front foot of all of the change. So it might feel like opportunities are shrinking, but I think the flip of that is that their opportunities are opening and demand is increasing in other areas.
That's interesting. So what areas are you seeing some expansion in, if you want to elaborate a little bit more on that? Like, what roles in particular are you like, hey, Jeff, I'm starting to see, more companies want this position or this position. Anything that sort of sticks out that you can tell our listeners and viewers about?
I think people who are a little bit more multidisciplinary, people who are historically generalists, but also have specialty skills. I'm seeing a lot more interest in T-shaped creatives who maybe came up one track, but also have dipped into other areas of creativity. I'm also seeing a lot of roles open up for people who are very commercially driven and more growth mindset driven. I think that as businesses are looking to demonstrate profitability, obviously, generate revenue and, really understanding the commercial side. I think creatives and also marketers who have a deep understanding of how to drive growth and efficiencies. I think that a lot of that is becoming increasingly important. I think there was a time, where creatives could just be creatives and, or engineers could just be engineers and you just, but now I think everyone that's commercially driven that really understands how that works just makes them just greater and smarter.
You think?
Yeah. That's another thing. It's so much information, so many new hires, and so many different types of people who are entering the industry who are like tangential. And so it's like, I get how it can be a little bit confusing. I get mixed up all the time.
Yeah. I mean, one thing about the T shape, do you think that, um, so someone might come up, let's say in one area, let's say they're a UX designer, but they spread across the T by starting to understand web development, creative, maybe a little bit of generative AI, maybe understanding why a website exists in the first place to drive business. So that's sort of where that line, if we look at the horizontal line on a T, takes place, even though they may have come up through that vertical line as like, oh, I was just a UX designer for most of my career. Is that a good example to share with the audience, or is that a
Yeah. Yeah,
terrible
I think
example?
so. I think so. I feel like the more skills you have, just like the more value you bring and the more marketable you are. I mean, even if, let's say you're a UX designer and, maybe your core competency isn't like, classic brand design, at least you could speak to it and collaborate with people who might be in-house or any agency like object or a studio and be able to speak the same language, right? So it's like, because it's all sort of in the same ecosystem, and to be able to know how to tap into different types of like-minded objects, even though their specialty might be, classic brand design or maybe motion or whatnot, but just to bring it all together and orchestrate that, I think just makes you better.
Yeah, I love that. That's interesting to sort of hear from someone who's on the front lines. What other skills are employers really looking for right now? And I'm talking, when I say skills, I'm talking general skills. Like if I was actually going for a job in engineering, or I was going for a job in the advertising industry, or I was going for a job in customer service, like what are like two skills that every single recruiter is looking for, regardless of the field that you are, looking to pursue right now?
Oh, that's a really great question. I mean, I don't know if I have like just a one size fits all answer, because I think with humans, everyone's different and they bring something different to every conversation. I think for me, when I talk to talent, obviously, like I can see through their CV and I can see through their portfolio, their body of work and what they've done. I just like to get to know the human, and
Mhm.
just wanted to see more who they are, other than just words off a page or, pieces in a portfolio. I like to know, what makes them who they are, their personality, just how they think, how they communicate, how they listen. So there's a lot about just, your first impression and just like the chemistry that you have, whether it's a conversation with me or others within an organization as you go through the process. So communication is pretty important. I think how you show up, it's important, and how prepared you are. Um, yeah, I think those are probably good baseline things to have.
Let's touch on the CV for a second, the modern day resume. A lot of criticism about it from a number of different people who are out there. Some who think that it's outdated, others who think, look, you need it so that it can be entered into a system officially so that people can actually, see who someone is. What approach should people take when it comes to their resume and their CV now? Should they be taking a less is more approach, meaning, keep it one page, keep it concise, keep it with some statistics? Or depending on the role, should they, keep it more around 3 pages and elaborate a little bit more on what it is that they've done in their career? Just curious for your take here, especially knowing that we have a number of tracking systems that these resumes have to sort of get through.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of simplification and less is more. I think that how it's designed and laid out is important. I think that there are so many resumes that come my way, and sometimes it's just like a word clutter bomb, and there's no organization to it. There's no order to it. And, it's hard to sift through when you think about the volume that you get on a day-to-day basis. I think keywords are important. But I think simplification, I think, is everything. It'll just cut through. Um, because when we're thinking about how we move through our day and how much attention we have and how many inputs we get daily, just for something to cut through, I think simplicity matters.
Red flag are not a big deal to you. You get a resume, it has a person who has had a job for only a year, and then it has a small gap, and then it has a job for 3 years, and then it has a job that may only be for a year with another gap. Is that a red flag, or is that something that you sort of overlook based on context?
I'm a big context person. Think that, look, life has happened and life happens for a lot of people that you can't quite articulate on a page. And I also think that, post 2020, I mean, I think that there have been so many things that have impacted the lives of individuals. And, there's a new generation of people who have changed jobs dramatically because of circumstances that happen, whether it be life circumstances or 2020 circumstances or whatever it is. So for me, yes, it is gosh, I don't want to use this, but like, old school thinking, oh, they've only been there for a year. They've only been there for, I won't look at them. And I understand that in theory. I do understand that in theory, but sometimes I like to dig deeper and really understand what's really happening. If, to your point, there are some places that they have been at and they have demonstrated impact, I wouldn't be quick to overlook that. But it does tell a story, and there are people who will probably likely disagree with what I say. But I don't know. I just take a more human approach, and I'm more empathetic.
You sort of have a more empathetic or approach to things, which I think is good. Like when I've been in the hiring position in terms of interviewing people to hire for positions, like in my past roles at companies, I've always taken always approach with empathy. You don't know where this person's situation, may have been. You don't know why they have gaps. Some people who have had gaps are like, yeah, I was diagnosed with cancer and I had to get chemo and I came back and I took a job. Like you can't penalize them for that. You know what I mean? Whereas someone else might say like, yeah, I was fired from a role. And that you may look different upon than someone who's like, well, I'd take care of a sick parent. I'd take care of myself. I had kids. I got laid off. I got fired. I mean, there's a reason for everything. I think it's always good when you have that human to human discussion. You're really looking to figure out like, okay, well, this person sort of fit into this organization based on some of their, how they've handled some of their past, ups and downs. I think that's always important.
Oh, I agree. And it just makes that person, I think, when they've gone through life circumstances, whatever it is, health, family, personal, whatever. It just makes you just a better person in an
Yes.
organization, right? You want people with empathy and people who understand the complexities of people in general, just to get the best out of them. And
Yeah.
I just think
Yeah.
that we're in that world now. We should have always been, but even now more than ever.
Yeah, it's sort of like I remember I would always use this phrase and I stole it from my late father. He would always say, "You want people who have actually had a lived experience. Doesn't matter what age they are because people have different lived experiences because if they tell you what that lived experience is, you might say, "Oh, if they're faced with that issue on this team, I know they'll know how to respond to it because they'll at least be able to say like, oh yeah, that happened to me before. Here's what I did in the past. Here's what maybe we could do now, or maybe what we don't do now," which is different from someone who might say, I know everything and I'll just sort of figure it out when it comes my way. Sometimes I think those people panic actually and have knee-jerk reactions because they don't have any lived experience.
Thinking about what you asked me earlier in terms of like what's like the shrinking aspect of some agencies or companies, it's like, if that's requiring people to think more proactively and be more resourceful and to think leaner and be, to know how to work with less, then what better with someone who maybe might have had a disadvantaged background in their life, who's had to hustle and work with nothing and not have a, plush bench of resources, and had to do
Yeah.
it on their own. I mean, that's transferable skills.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think need to hire more of those people, because if you say, hey, here's sort of the shoestring budgets we have, that they actually become much more creative because they've sort of faced those situations before in their past.
Absolutely.
What is AI's role in recruiting right now? How do you see it? How does Frannie see it? And what, how, if you could control more of it, how should really recruiters be using it when it comes to,
Yeah,
placing
I
people?
think more of research capability, you know, researching, I think is a good way to utilize it. I do think that there's still a level of curation that needs to happen on top of the research and the data you get. Because again, back to the human part of it, I think that you could only, know so much about someone off of words on a page or just through their book. It's going to require someone to really dig deep into what that all means and really understand the individual behind it. And it allows for someone like me who, again, is always looking for talent and working with executives and senior roles to really understand, like, who can make sense of all the information and who are these people and, what's going to be the right fit. Because AI can only do so much. It can help, but it gives me personally the space to be more strategic and to connect more dots, and to do a little bit more of fact finding. It's actually opened up a whole world in terms of access to talent, but also being a little bit more strategic on how to approach them and how to curate the talent for a certain brief or an organization.
Layoffs. It's all around us. It has been around us for the past 2 years. What are 3 bits of advice you would give to someone who is about to be laid off, or was currently, was laid off just recently? What are 3 bits of advice for someone in that position?
That's a great question because I was impacted by a layoff. And I will say that, if it's your first time, your second time, your third time, your fourth time, doesn't matter. There's always a little bit of a, oh, wow, I can't believe this is happening. And that's normal. And I think that it does make you stronger. And I think that if you have the means to take a beat, I think that that is so, so important. Um, and not be reactive, just sort of like take inventory, take a moment to be reflective, and just know that everything is going to be okay. And to be patient, to be really patient, and to remain humble and hungry. I think that those would be some, pieces of advice. Because there is opportunity on the other side, though when you're in the thick of it and in the weeds, it doesn't feel that way. Because it can be very scary, and the unknown is very, very scary. So anything that one could do to just sort of reset, reflect, and be responsive versus reactive, I think will just make you better.
Career pivot. We hear this quite a bit. Someone is in a particular field, they want to pivot into another field. What's the best way to approach that or embrace that? A lot of times people will say, no, you can't do that. You're in that field. That's all you're going to ever do for the rest of your life. But we know that's not really true. What's the best bits of advice for people who are looking to change career paths right now?
I think the obvious one is networking. I think it's building the community around you that can give you access to the pivot that you want to get into, and activating new relationships and new conversations. And, you know, I think in order to prep for to do a career pivot, you have to prep for one. So whether that might be financial prep or, um, you know, knowledge prep. Just I wouldn't pivot when you're in a reactive state. Maybe pivot when you're in a proactive state where you kind of side hustled some conversations or collected some acorns under your beds. You can allow yourself the time and space to work on the pivot. I think that's where I would start. It's not easy. And I know that people who are senior in their careers might be accustomed to a lifestyle where they've had, really great salaries. And sometimes in order to do a pivot, you might have to, step back and do lateral or even, go down a couple rungs just to sort of like get your foot in the door and just be open to that and just know that that you're doing it because it's going to lead to something that you really, really want to do or want to try.
Question on that. If someone is wanting to make a pivot and a recruiter sees, well, this person sort of has, they can guess based on what that person has done and where they've worked, how much they've earned. And that immediately gets them to go, let's put them in the no pile because they're going to want too much, too much salary. But the candidate is like, I don't need that salary anymore. I'm older in my career. I don't have, let's say, I've paid my kids' college off or I don't have kids. I'm just looking to do interesting work and I'm okay with taking whatever amount. I mean, do we need to have more of that conversation? Because I don't sense that at all with how recruiting
Absolutely.
systems work. Like, how do we build for that infrastructure? Because it does not exist right now.
That's a great question. Gosh, I just, for the candidate, if you're able to get a live conversation with the recruiter, just make it be known what you can handle given your household P&L. To say, hey, look,
Yeah.
I used to be chief muckety muck at, muckety muck place, but I'm in a different life stage and my household P&L requires me to
That's
only
right.
need to make X amount. And I don't want to knock myself out of, these conversations. I would, from a candidate, make it be known. And I think maybe there's a creative way on a CV to indicate that in the language up front or the cover letter. But yeah, I think it just needs to be known because I think assumptions are very easy to lead
Yes.
into. And so, however you can decouple that and not let people assume, I think it's the way to approach it.
Yeah, you bring up a good point. I think that's where when people are like, what's the cover letter for? I mean, if you're in that position and you're like, hey, I want to sort of state why I'm going for this, let's say $95,000 a year role, whereas maybe you were paid 300K for much of your career. Some people might say like, oh, this person's desperate. But that person might be like, I'm not necessarily desperate. I want to sort of shift into doing something that is, not what I did in the past. I want to be an individual contributor and I'm okay with making that amount of money because I'm at a particular point where maybe I invested a certain amount or I have a ton of stock options from my past. Like nobody knows. I guess what I'm getting at here, Franny, is when people say, let's not talk salary, I think that's ridiculous because in a lot of ways, it's not just talking about how much a candidate wants to make. It's like, let's just have a realistic conversation if this could be a good fit without letting salary muddle whether it's going to be a gate opener or a gate closer. I find too many conversations are like, what's your salary qualifications? Like, let's not talk about that at the moment. Let's
Yeah,
actually talk about, what I would take for the least amount instead of they're always asking what you would expect at the high end. It's like, let's talk about the low end. Like I'm fine with taking
totally.
X amount,
Totally.
I don't
And
know.
I think be open about that. Honestly, like I think that, it just puts you or anyone in a better position as budgets are coming down significantly,
Yes.
and there are organizations that need senior talent and, might be able to make some concessions, if it's someone who's willing to do the job at that price point, then why limit yourself?
Yeah. Statistics just were released um, as we're speaking that there are less jobs than there are now qualified candidates. What's the one bit of advice to all of the candidates out there looking for opportunities that'll make them stand out now in what is a crowded, crowded field of people seeking, employment?
I think stay humble, stay hungry. I think be patient. I think surround yourself with really good community, cultivate your network. Every conversation counts. I'm a really big believer on that. And whether you're at a restaurant, in line, whether you're at the grocery store, who knows? But, be personable, talk to people, let people know who you are. And gosh, it might lead you somewhere. And I think at the end of the day, why I'm in this business, especially on the talent side, at the end of the day, I just feel like people genuinely want to help other people. I want to believe the good in people. And so, and that's what lights me up with this job is I just want to help people and help organizations with amazing talent. So that being said, if people who are looking for work and just feeling, the frustration that everyone's feeling in some form is just to stay strong and positive. And I know that sounds so like wooey and whatnot, but there is something to be said about positivity and how infectious that is. And, just keeping on, everyone got here this far in their career. And that's not to say that it's over for them and they can continue to push. It is uncertain and it is dynamic and who knows what the future brings. But, your health is your wealth and just protect that.
Some people think we're going to be in a world where there will be no human recruiters, that everything will be agentic AI, that you upload your CV to an agent and it talks to another agent. Tell me why that is bullshit.
Because I feel like in an increasingly transactional world, at the end of the day, we're just human. That's what connects us all. And I see the value in technology and the automation and the agents and whatnot, but I I do believe that it's going to be very hard to recreate a human emotion and empathy. And I think that's what's going to cut through always.
Frannie Rhodes, president of North America and global creative at The Talent Business. Thanks for joining us here on the Posted podcast.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
The Posted Careers podcast, conversations at the intersection of careers and the future of work. Posted Careers. Don't get hooked. Get hired. Stop endlessly scrolling. Start quickly finding. Check out fresh jobs. Served daily at Posted.Careers.